If your graphic doesn't stop the scroll, then it's not working. Let's fix that starting now. This is the first video in a series where we learn graphic design using Pixelmator. You can use any tool of your choice though, and we're going to be doing this step by step. Today, we're designing a clean social media graphic from scratch, and you'll learn how to use layers, guides, shadows, and more. Let's build this together. So when you're opening Pixelmator for the first time, you'll be greeted with this dialog box here. Because I've previously created documents, I have a list of previous documents on this side here. But let's not focus on this. Let's select create a new document. So we'll be working with a square, so our dimensions are 1080 by 1080. The resolution is 72 pixels per inch, and we're leaving the color depth as is. So let's go ahead and hit create. So now we have our canvas. On the left hand side, you'll notice that we have the layers panel with just one layer, which is our image layer. We can toggle it by clicking the check mark, which hides or shows the layer. We can also lock it if we desire. Let's go ahead and lock this layer for now. On the right hand side, we have a bunch of tools, and we'll be using a few of them in this video. The first thing we need to do though is set up our project. So let's go up to the top, let's go to view, and the first thing we want to do is click show rulers. So now that we have the rulers, let's set some guides for our margins. For this graphic, we want a margin of 50 pixels on each side. You can hit Command plus to zoom in, and then let's just click and drag from the left side to create a margin of 50 pixels with our guide. Let's do it from the top as well. And for this side, we have to do a little bit of computation. So it's 1080 minus 50 pixels, which would be about 1030. And then it would be the same for our last guide here. So now we have our margin set up. So our next step is to add an image. To add an image to your design, you can go to insert, choose, and then choose an image from your files. Now we have this image here, but we actually want to remove the background. So let's actually put it in its own document and remove the background. Let's do this by hitting Command X to cut it. Let's go up to File, New from Clipboard, and now we have a new tab, and we'll use this tab to remove the background. So to remove the background, you could go ahead and hit Shift Delete. What that actually does is Pixelmator assesses the image and automatically removes the background for you. Now this works sometimes, but it doesn't always give you the best result. So you'll notice that the edges aren't as clean as we want. So let's go ahead and hit Command Z. Command Z undoes whatever you previously just did. And then let's go ahead and use our selection tool to manually create a selection of our subject. We can use the square bracket keys to increase the size of our brush. So by hovering over an element, you'll notice that with my selection tool selected, I'm getting a yellow highlight showcasing what would be selected. To select it, all I need to do is click and keep clicking to add to my selection, because we have the add option selected here. I can also click and drag to include other sections in my selection and make it a bit faster. Now we want the outer edges, this black section of the plate, to show. So what we're going to do is we're going to change from our selection tool here to something a little bit more granular, which is our free selection tool. So with this freehand selection tool, we're going to zoom into our plate. So we're simply just going to click to add points around the edge of our plate. The more time you take in making your selection, the better it looks. So let's go ahead and complete the selection, and I'll just speed up this section of the video. Now that the selection is complete, we're going to go over here and select invert selection, which selects everything except our plate, and then we're going to go ahead and hit delete. Now we're going to hit Command D to remove the selection. Let's hit V, which selects our plate. Let's hit Command C to copy it. Let's go over to our original document and hit Command V to paste it. You can click and drag any one of the 4 edges to alter the size of the dish. Let's place it here for now. Now let's think about adding some text. This looks like a breakfast meal, so let's go ahead and hit T on our keyboard, or select the text tool from here, and let's click anywhere on our canvas, and this allows a text box to come up where we can type. So with our text box, let's double click it and let's add the text breakfast. Let's also change the font. So to change the font, ensure that we have it selected here, or you can click on it in the layers panel. You can jump over to the text panel and choose a font that you desire. I also want this to be all caps. So to edit this, simply select the gear icon here and change capitalization from none to all caps. If we want to increase the size, we can do this by changing the size here, or simply dragging the slider to the right. Let's duplicate this by hitting Command J, and then let's drag the second layer down a bit. Now we're going to change this from breakfast to special. So just double click the text and just add the word special. Now I want to scale this so that it's the same size as breakfast. To do this, I'm going to add some more guides, and let's zoom in to ensure that the guides are lined up perfectly with both the edges of the text. Next, with the alignment of our text, at center, we can click and drag our sliders until we get to the desired size that we want. Now that we have it, let's move it down a bit and let's zoom out to see what we look like. Now before I go any further, you'll notice that I can freely move from the left to the right to offset my canvas. If you're not able to do that, and that's something that you would love to do, simply go up to View and deselect Auto Center. With Auto Center selected, I'm not able to move left or right with my scroll wheel. However, once I deselect it, I can move left or right of my design freely. So let's hit V on our keyboard to go back to our Arrange tool, and let's move our plates to the center. Let's zoom out a bit, and we're going to scale up the size of the plate to fill the entire bottom section of our design. Now to scale it in its current position, simply hold down Option while you click and drag from one of the 4 edges. Adjust the position to your liking, ensure that you keep it in the center, and the next thing that I'm going to do is place the plate above my text. To do this, you can simply go to your layers panel and click and drag to place it on top of the text that you have. Now we're going to create a shadow for our dish, and the way we're going to create the shadow is by duplicating our image layer here by hitting Command J. We're going to change our image by double clicking on the name here, and we're going to change it to shadow. Then we're going to go in our effects panel. We're going to add 2 effects. The first effect that we'll be adding is a color fill, and we're going to set our color fill to black. And then the second effect will be a Gaussian blur. Now simply by just adding those 2 effects, we already have a shadow, but we want to offset it. Now let's adjust the shadow to our liking, but before we do that, let's lock our layer that's above it so that we can move our shadow freely. Let's click and drag it to move it to the location that we desire. And now our shadow is a bit harsh, so what we'll actually do is turn down the opacity. To do this, you can simply go to opacity here in the layers panel and adjust the opacity to your liking. We can also go back to our effects layer and adjust the blur radius to make the edge a bit softer. Now let's adjust the color of our text and choose some colors from our dish. We can do this by selecting the text, then go into the text tool, and we're going to use our color picker. Once you click it, you should see it highlighted in blue. Now as you hover over the dish, the color picker gives you a preview of the color that you can add to the design. Simply click, and that adds the color to the existing layer that you would have selected before. Let's select special and add another color. Let's go ahead and add our green. Let's group our layers, and to group a layer, simply select it, hold down command and select the other layer that you want to add to the group, and hit command G to group both layers. Now, once you have the move tool selected, you can move both layers as if they were one. That being said, let's hold down option and shrink the size of our dish a little bit. Finally, we'll be adding a background, and to do this, we're going to select U on our keyboard, which opens up our shape tool. We're going to select rectangle from the list of shapes that we have available, and we're going to click and drag out a rectangle onto our canvas. Next, let's go to the layers panel and just click and drag the rectangle below all the previous layers. And just like before, we're going to add a color from our dish. Let's select V on our keyboard to go back to the move tool. Now that we've added the background, we can actually go ahead and play around with the colors a little bit more. So let's change our header from a yellow to probably a white, and we can simply click the white here. Let's change this green from green. This looks fine. Now we want to add a few more elements to elevate the design. Here we have another image that I'm thinking we could add to the design. So let's go ahead and remove the background by using Shift Delete. Let's hit V to select the layer and Command C to copy it. Let's go back to our original graphic and hit Command V to paste it. You'll notice it's behind, and it's behind in the layers panel as well. So click and drag it to put it at the forefront. Then let's select it, and with it selected, let's change the size and place it off center. Now once we have it in the position that we want, we can go ahead and add a shadow to it, similar to what we would have done before. Now in this case, we want to ensure that all our shadows are pointing in the same direction. So let's adjust the shadow. So right now I'm using my arrow keys to slowly move the shadow to ensure that it's pointing in the same direction. Next, we're going to drop the opacity a little bit. And finally, group both layers. Now let's go ahead and add a few more elements to this design. Now what if you wanted to rotate an element that you have added to the design? With the move tool selected, you can simply rotate it by clicking and dragging this wheel here, punching in the values that you desire, or using the arrow keys to be very specific. Finally, we want to add a few more finishing touches. I've realized that we've added a lot of red to the graphic and we already have a red background, so we can go ahead and change our background color from red to something else. This is starting to look nice. However, we can do a little bit more, so let's add another shape. Let's add a circle, and let's click and drag while holding down Shift to ensure that it's a perfect circle and not an oval. Then let's go back to our color tool and let's just lighten this color a bit. Now we're going to go to the effects panel and we're going to add a Gaussian blur to our circle. Let's crank up the radius. Finally, let's move it into position so that it highlights our plate. So let's bring it above the dish so that we can move it into the exact position that we want. So with that done, let's place it right above our background. Let's hit V. We can actually adjust it a little bit more. So let's hold down the Shift key while we use our arrow keys to make some adjustments. Finally, let's change the color of our special to something that is no longer clashing with our green. And here we have our completed graphic. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video in the series. Alright, see you there.